What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this camera being uploaded to this channel on this platform is the Thunder channel on Nootropics. Thanks so much for being with me. So is ALCAR a super nootropic? My short answer is yes, and I want to break down some things that it does that we don't often talk about, like dopamine release and how that's really relevant to a lot of people. In the meantime, epic nootropic products at livecortex.com. Number one, the Cortex stack. I mean, this is stuff you take if you just want mental energy, motivation, verbal fluency on cue. It's just an energizing, clean stimulant. Like, what more could you want from a supplement than a stimulant effect that gets you going, but that's clean? At the same time, though, because of the uridine and the CDP choline in it, it's also working on neurogenesis. You take it with the B complex, you take it with caffeine, you take it with fish oil, or all of the above, forget it. You have an extremely fluid, extremely fast, extremely epic brain. Get Cortex, livecortex.com. Perfect subscription price at $27.99. If you're new to Nootropics, Nootropics Ground Zero is where you have to be. Video course that I created for people that are new. Next step up above that is the Nootropics Masterclass. More higher level principles and strategies and a ton of stacks in that video course. And if you want to go to the 10-year mark, that is defined as the God level in using nootropics. Not many people on the planet are at that mark. I created a course called the Nootropics God Course. That course is as data rich, stack rich, and as principle rich in getting good results from nootropics as a course gets. It's actually the most advanced course in the world on nootropics. Get it at livecortex.com. And lastly, if you want to work with me on a one-on-one capacity, we've got brain engineering consults. They are brain engineering and energy optimization consults. You basically have my 15 years of experience on a one-on-one with you to get you to the point where you're firing on all cylinders. Do those consults at livecortex.com. There are slots open. All right, so let's just break down ALCAR first, and then I want to read from a study some really impressive things that it does, and then discuss where that's applicable. So just taking the amino acid L-carnitine, right, which is where it derives. L-carnitine is an amino acid you can get from a variety of foods, and it's a pretty critical amino acid for sort of shuttling fatty acids around your physiology for energy production. It's actually really necessary. But the one deficiency in L-carnitine is it's sort of, I don't want to use the phrase rate limited because that's sort of inappropriate here, but it's limited to its ability to affect brain chemistry. It's not completely limited, but it's largely limited in that the fluid-filled sac that protects the brain from pathogens mainly, but that, through certain chemical bonds will allow certain compounds through to affect brain physiology. It's called the blood-brain barrier. L-carnitine has a difficult time in mass accumulation crossing the blood-brain barrier. So that's why we have acetyl L-carnitine, which is basically an acetyl chemical group bonded to L-carnitine so that it crosses the blood-brain barrier. One of its actions in crossing the blood-brain barrier through mobilized fatty acids and the transport of those fatty acids to the brain is they actually end up entering brain cell mitochondria. And we all know that optimizes energy turnover, energy output. So you'll have better brain energy from taking ALCAR. But that's what we primarily know it as, right? That and some degree of additional acetylcholine synthesis. Not building, right? It's not a building block to acetylcholine. It'll just help you synthesize a little more acetylcholine. So already here, we have a pretty multifaceted nootropic stack, right? Giving the brain energy and then also helping you synthesize a little more acetylcholine. But what a lot of people don't know about it, and this is what makes it a super nootropic, absolutely in my book, is that it will also get you to release more dopamine and more serotonin sustainably. The study I'm referencing is through a 7-day period, right? So if you're wanting to experiment with what it feels like to, on top of the mitochondrial fatty acid, energy production situation and the acetylcholine synthesis, see what it feels like to have more dopamine release in the mesocortical limbic areas, which are crucial for sexual function as well as the dopamine reward response, then you should probably experiment with ALCAR for like 7 days. The dose range, if you were to run this experiment to try to get this effect, would be 300 to 700 milligrams. You really don't want to go above that, because above that is like, now you're talking about pre-workout energy drink doses, which are in the 1,000 milligram range for ALCAR, and that can be overstimulating. It's perfect if you have a vehicle through which you can express or get rid of that extra energy, like working out or something. But if you're going to be sitting down to work, it may be hard to focus in that particular case. So I want to read from you the critical relevant piece of a study on ALCAR administration in rats for 7 days. It's called "The Effects of Long-Term Acetyl L-Carnitine Administration in Rats: Increased Dopamine Output in Mesocortical limbic areas and Protection toward Acute Stress Exposure," which is another really interesting thing that it does. It puts you in a place where, in the presence of stress, the stress would be attenuated, right? Your response from it won't be as severe as your response typically is to stress, assuming all other things in your brain are under control. Not going to necessarily be applicable to everybody. The relevant piece in the abstract, and this is actually a pretty long, it's like a 10-page study. It's a pretty long study. And I would urge you, if you're like a geek like me, to go and read it and fully understand, is the following. A 7-day administration of ALCAR in rats increased dopamine and serotonin output. So that's projection. That's a really, really important thing in the nucleus accumbens shell, and it prevented the development of escape deficit produced by acute exposure to unavoidable stress. So we have a compound here that is fostering energy production, right? Pillar number one in a good nootropic. At the same time, helping you synthesize a little more acetylcholine, pretty critical pillar number two, having a nootropic, right? Synthesizing a neurotransmitter. But at the same time, making you release more dopamine and serotonin. A lot of the people that have come to me for questions or help, or that I've communicated with about PSSD, which is a condition characterized by a muting of sexual functions as males and females, but I only work with males, induced by SSRIs, right? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And ALCAR tends to give those folks relief, because one of the primary issues in that condition is a complete derangement in the release and the signaling of dopamine. So ALCAR tends to give these people windows just in and of itself, because it's getting you to release a little more dopamine. Now, ultimately in that condition, there's a lot of other downed things, and it isn't a sustainable cure or something to be taking ALCAR, because you've got to fix all these other things too, not the least of which in some people is a complete androgen insensitivity. So it's a whole complex deal. Some of my clients look, we've got stacks situated for them, 25, 30 stacks situated for them. Some of them, aside from those stacks, will take like 500 milligrams of ALCAR, throw down some coffee, maybe take a little theanine, and they're in like perfect flow states. The stuff is magical. I take ALCAR usually in combination with Cortex. Like I'll take Cortex and Cortex just lights me up. But some days when I'm like, wow, I want to be super lit up, maybe I'll game for like 4 or 5 hours straight. I'll take the Cortex stack and then 300 or 400, 3 to 500, let's call it, milligrams of ALCAR. And then I'm like, wow, like I'm just in this whole other place of like clean stimulant energy, which is what Cortex delivers, and then all this extra kind of dopamine release and acetylcholine synthesis that ALCAR is putting into the mix. There are, in the roster of nootropics that we typically talk about, there's only a few super nootropics, right? There's ALCAR, there's uridine monophosphate. That is a super nootropic. Dopamine release, a little bit of acetylcholine production, aids in neurogenesis, stacks incredibly well with B vitamins, helps the brain to function incredibly. And ALCAR is one of those compounds. If you're looking at a compound and trying to decide whether or not it's a super nootropic, and that it can be taken by itself, it can be taken pretty sustainably without cycling 7 to 10 days, and then you should cycle it. I think you should cycle everything. Has a variety of mechanistic actions on neurophysiology. You want to look at it releasing more than one neurotransmitter, right? Synthesizing a neurotransmitter, and then having some other baseline, characterization to it, like positive effect to it. In this case, optimizing mitochondrial energy production in brain cells. I mean, this stuff is awesome. And the greatest part about ALCAR is it's like, it's not a racetam. It's not, some compound that's like not on the GRAS list or something. It's a supplement. You can buy it anywhere. It's one of those compounds that's just like, wow, you take it, you notice an incredible effect from it, it's pretty sustainable long term, and it has positive other effects to it too. Like if you consume alcohol, 2-3 drinks or something, well, you've provoked this, or really invoked this this action of oxidative stress in brain cells. ALCAR alleviates oxidative stress induced by ALCAR. There's a study on it. You should read it. This stuff is really, really powerful. Longer-term administration of ALCAR, which is an entirely separate study, which I don't have in front of me, you'll have to hunt down, reduces the accumulation of lipofuscin. Lipofuscin is kind of like this accumulation of metals and sugars and otherwise toxic chemicals, toxicants effectively, that accumulate over time in your brain. ALCAR helps reduce lipofuscin. I mean, the stuff is amazing. So the answer to the question, is ALCAR a super nootropic? It absolutely is, considering all of that stuff that it does. Go take some ALCAR. Don't forget about it. It was on my top 12 favorite nootropics, the first list, which was like back in 2016 or something. And then I believe it should have made, otherwise I don't know what the hell I'm doing, my second list, which was in 2020, 2021 of top 12 or maybe top 15 nootropics. I'm due to do another one. I think I'll do a 2022 version, and ALCAR will absolutely be on it. Thank you so much for being with me, everybody. Go get some Cortex, livecortex.com. I mean, look, this stuff supports the broadcast, but it's also been out for 6 years, ships to 40 countries at this point. Entrepreneurs and business people use it. It's like, if you want to take a couple capsules and get clean stimulant energy, but also functional brain capacity, verbal fluency, motivation, the drive to work, crazy energy. The stuff is just, I can't say enough good things about it. I created a monster in Cortex. Get it at livecortex.com. Perfect subscription price, $27.99 a month. If you're new to nootropics, ground zero is where you have to start. Just get the course, watch the course. You'll be 3 years ahead of yourself now and 3 years ahead of everyone else that's new to nootropics. If you're a couple years in and want to ascend quickly to the 6-year mark, get the Nootropics Masterclass. And then if you're a couple years in, or maybe even 4 or 5 years in, but you just want to skip to the 10-year plus mark, which is the God level. I mean, there aren't courses and information out there on the internet, in the world, on par with the information in the Nootropics God course. Get that course, livecortex.com. Lastly, if you want to work with me on a one-on-one capacity to formulate stacks, optimize baseline energy, adjust stacks to perfection. If you're a guy and we have to work on test, we work on test. If your sleep is inhibiting your ability to have energy, we've got to work on sleep. This is full brain and energy optimization using nootropics and classical supplements. These 3.5 months or 6-month consults, get them at livecortex.com. They are my pride and joy and my favorite thing to do, and there are slots open. Thank you so much for being with me, everybody. Talk to you next time.